50,000 years in the making. Australia has been built on heroes and heart. Explorers, builders, and the brave. This time, in a great war, Australians invent new ways to fight and save lives. In peace, they meet hard times with optimism and resolve to defend their continent in a Second World War. This is the story of Australia. In 1916, Australia is devastated by its defeat in Turkey, but it stays committed to World War I. Australian soldiers now head to France and Belgium. But it's not just men who will prove themselves in the worst killing fields in history. August 21, 1917, Brandhoek, Belgium. German shell fire creeps closer to an Australian casualty clearing station, a frontline hospital.
Squeeze my hand, that's the way.
Alicia Kelly, a war nurse in Gallipoli. She routinely saves severely wounded men. But today, Alicia must choose between her own safety and the lives of her patients.
He's bleeding, he's in and out of consciousness and no anaesthetic.
I think the Australian character is at its best when it's tested. It's that ability to put aside ourselves and do what needs to be done for the good of our fellow man.
The First World War is dominated by machine guns and heavy artillery. They create injuries on a scale never seen before. And by far the bloodiest fighting is on the Western Front. The front is a vast series of trenches, 700 kilometres long, stretching from the Swiss border to the Belgian coast. Here, 2 out of 3 Anzacs are killed or wounded, the highest casualty rate suffered by any country in the British Empire. Wounded men are treated far behind the front line. The journeys are long and dangerous, and many die before reaching help. But a new idea will save thousands. Casualty clearing stations close to the battlefront.
The casualty clearing stations were moved within 6 to 10 kilometres of the front line, which meant that the seriously wounded men were able to get the major surgery that they needed as soon as possible.
Squeeze my hand.
We know from studying the medical literature today how important it is to get to trauma quickly. So it was very innovative that they had this mentality back then in the First World War.
But how close to the front line is too close? The Germans are only 7 kilometres away. Their guns can lob shells over twice that distance.
He's gonna be fine. Fine?
And the shelling is getting closer. Working alongside Alicia is Padre Evelyn Munchamp.
The noise of the guns has been startling and deafening. One bomb fell close to the sisters' quarters, killing an officer and an orderly.
Over 2,000 nurses like Alicia serve in the Australian Army Nursing Service. In Cairo, London, Lemnos, on hospital ships in the Mediterranean, as well as caring for the wounded from the battlefields of France and Belgium.
For too long, we've associated heroism just with male military battle courage. The nurses were just as heroic.
Nurses must be between 21 and 40 and single to enlist. Many of those who marry keep it secret so they can keep working. Australian nurses are not supposed to be deployed on the front line.
The peak of a nurse's ambition when she was at the Western Front was to actually get to a casualty clearing station. They wanted to get as close as possible to their boys to make the greatest difference that they could.
The German bombardment intensifies. Many of Alicia's patients are too badly hurt to be moved.
Medical staff, please, to the shelter now, please. Medical staff, please.
She gets the order she's been dreading.
Sister? Sister Kelly, please, come now.
I know, I will. I'll follow you.
No, you must come now,
I know,
please.
I will, I promise.
Sister Kelly, please,
I'll
I
be
beg
there,
you,
I'll be
come
there.
now, please. Come on, you must come.
She must leave her patients in their beds, immobile, vulnerable, terrified.
Nurse Kelly, keep going.
I'm going back in.
You can't.
Alicia's loyalty to her patients outweighs her instinct for survival.
James, what are you doing? You need to get back into bed. Come on, please, do that for me. That's it, that's the best way. Stay calm, okay?
She spreads calm, comfort,
Fine, gentlemen, we're gonna be fine.
and some inventive armour.
I want you to put this on your head, okay? It might just protect you. James, I want you to do this for me.
Clearly she understands what's going on. She'd be very well aware that at any moment one of those artillery shells could land. But she does it because, again, she's displaying that Anzac spirit, because she knows that that's her job.
I know the basins are useless for protection, especially with a direct hit.
That's all we have to do.
But they are especially good for morale.
The women were told not to talk to men, which, being Aussie girls, they did all the time. I mean, they developed a personal relationship with patients.
Alicia's colleagues take refuge from the attack in the bomb shelter.
Where's Sister Kelly?
She went back.
The Germans continue to lob 40-kilogram shells at the clearing station.
Padre?
Risking his own life, the Padre goes back for Nurse Kelly.
She didn't even realise how brave she had been. She was merely concerned that she would get into trouble because she disobeyed the original order to leave them in and go to the dugout.
For her conspicuous gallantry under fire, Nurse Alicia Mary Kelly receives the Military Medal, the equivalent of the Victoria Cross for nurses.
Australians have that incredible ability to rise out of the darkness into the light with humour and grace. They don't wallow in self-pity. They really do go, she'll be right. And with a mate by your side, you can get through anything.
For 4 long years, Australians continue to fight and die bravely in World War I. But the cost in lives, money and grief comes close to breaking the young country. Australia and its allies are desperate to end the horror of the trenches. France, 1918. 4 years of war produced the greatest concentration of firepower the world has ever seen. A battlefront of hellish trenches, 700 kilometres long. Millions of soldiers hurl themselves at their enemy's guns in dawn attacks. The scale and speed of the killing is the worst in history, all for gains of a few kilometres at best. Until, following a radical plan, an army of 4,500 Australians goes forward from their trenches at night. They're about to launch a surprise attack on the town of Villers-Bretonneux, held by battle-hardened Germans. Heavily outnumbered, the Australians will begin the fight without the support of the great guns that have dominated the war so far.
One of the clever things in this case was the lack of an artillery barrage before the attack, a barrage that was so expected that if you skipped it, things would be a surprise. And a night attack, too. Armies generally patrolled at night and attacked at first light.
Gather round.
It's a plan that many consider insane. If it succeeds, it could change the course of the war. And it's all the brainchild of Melbourne solicitor, now Brigadier General Pompey Elliot. Brilliant, appalled by the cost of trench warfare, determined to find another way to fight and win.
This village is the key to the Allied supply line.
He was controversial, compelling, forthright. He called a spade a bloody shovel, but he was also an outstandingly successful commander.
The war is going badly for the Allies. The Germans have only just taken the town of Villers-Bretonneux. If they hold it, they will be a decisive step closer to taking Paris and winning the war. Pompey knows the Germans must be pushed back now. His plan: Anzacs will move in at night, quietly encircle the heavily defended town, and take the Germans by surprise, all in darkness and without artillery, just the weapons the Australians can carry. But only hours before Pompey plans to attack, he's still waiting for final permission. Some senior British officers have grave doubts about his tactics. Meanwhile, the diggers wait, nervous, vulnerable. At the last possible moment, Pompey gets the call he's been desperate for.
Right, man. This is it.
Now the Australians will attack in great numbers and from outside their trenches.
We've got this, man.
Section Commander Sergeant Walter Downing is an 8-month veteran of the trenches.
Men muttered, "It's Anzac Day," smiling to each other, enlivened by the omen. The die was now cast. It seemed there was nothing to do but go straight forward and die hard.
On the eve of Anzac Day 1918,
it's time.
Pompey Elliot's troops begin the battle that could change the course of the war. Sergeant Downing and his men are among the first Australians to storm Villers-Bretonneux and its formidable German defences. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the Anzacs are relentless.
They were full of running. They would have been very hard to stop.
In the initial charge, 1 in 3 Australians falls. They fight on through the night. The Australians kill, wound, or capture more than 10,000 Germans. By dawn, the Australians have broken their enemy. Pompey Elliot's audacious plan has come off. Pompey's attack is one of the boldest manoeuvres of the war. It's key to transforming the way the Allies fight from now on.
I think every Australian should know the name Pompey Elliot. To go from being a solicitor to actually a commander of one of the most brilliant victories at Villers-Bretonneux is just a story that every Australian's chest should swell with pride.
The Australian victory marks the beginning of the end of the war. Pompey and his troops continue their surprise attacks. 6 months, Germany will surrender. The French never forget the 1,200 Anzacs who died liberating their town, or the Australians at home whose donations help rebuild it. To this day, a special bond remains.
Now, of course, it's considered a little bit of Australia in France, and every Villers-Bretonneux child is an honorary Australian.
The Australian flag still flies proudly over Villers-Bretonneux. Since 1918, the main street is called Rue de Melbourne. Visitors from Australia are welcomed with open arms. And every day, local school children are reminded of what the diggers did.
Those guys had a tenacity, and a willingness to sacrifice for what they believed in. And that is the very essence, I think, of what the Anzac spirit is.
With its allies, Australia wins the war, but pays a shocking price. Out of a population of just 5 million, 400,000 fight. 1 in 7 will never come home. 150,000 return broken in body or mind. Despite the terrible losses, Australia emerges from the war with confidence, pride, and somehow optimism. Her people dream of a modern, connected country and hope for prosperity and peace. June 8, 1928. The Pacific. The world's largest ocean. No one has ever tried to fly across it. Until now. Charles Kingsford Smith. World War I flying ace, Hollywood stuntman. He will become the first to fly from America to Australia, or die trying.
He was a mad drinker, mad rooter, mad smoker, and he was a brilliant aviator.
His co-pilot, Charles Ulm. He and Kingsford Smith have flown around Australia together, but never faced anything like this. They're 2,000 kilometres from home, flying blind, off course, no place to land, through a storm that threatens to tear the plane apart.
Now, to be at night time over a rough ocean, but then to be in a storm, nothing could be more frightening. In those days, the instruments for flying in cloud were very basic, and so you needed great skill to be able to keep the plane in a position so it wasn't going to turn upside down and crash into the ocean.
Aeroplanes promise to shrink the world and transform Australia. The trip from America by boat takes 3 weeks. Smithy reckons he can do it in 9 days. He plans the flight in 3 legs. San Francisco to Hawaii, Hawaii to Fiji, Fiji to Brisbane. Almost 12,000 kilometres. Today, the crew is on the home run. Flight time, 20 hours. In the heroic age of flight, planes are basic. They're made from steel tubes and canvas. No heating, no seatbelts. Smithy replaces steel seats with wicker chairs to reduce weight. 5 hours into the flight, the storm intensifies. The Southern Cross communicates with Australia in Morse code. Smithy and Ulm pass notes over the 3,000-litre fuel tank fitted specially for this trip. Radio man Jim Warner taps out progress reports heard by radio stations in Australia.
message from the Southern Cross, which left Suva at 3 p.m. local time today.
Australian radio has only been on air for 5 years. This is the first live coverage of an international event. Thousands tune in, transfixed by the real-life adventure through the long night.
Weather deteriorating. We'll call again.
They'll be fine.
The fact that you could actually listen to a blow-by-blow description of what he was doing would have helped capture the imagination of Australia and made people want to know exactly where he was.
The Southern Cross's most crucial instrument is the Earth Inductor Compass. But in the rush to leave Hawaii, they forgot to oil it. It no longer works. Their backup is inaccurate. They've only a rough idea of where they are and where they're going. 8:30 p.m. The rain becomes too much for the windshields.
First came a steady drip of water on our knees. Then the drip became a shower and often a cascade till the pants of our overalls became sodden.
Their hands are so cold, they can't write entries in their logbook. Warner manages to tap out just 2 words.
This just in from the Southern Cross. Flying blind.
Okay, sweetheart.
We battled on through hissing walls of water, but we could not get out of it. The plane bucked so wildly that it became difficult to control.
After 10 hours, they've burnt half their fuel. The plane is now light enough for Smithy to climb more easily, looking for a break in the weather.
He could fly further, longer, better, through more storms than any bastard that ever lived. He was, you know, they said he could fly a packing crate.
But at 2,700 metres, the engines begin to falter. If they stop, the plane will plunge into the ocean. To fix it, Smithy risks everything in an extraordinary manoeuvre. A stomach-churning dive into the heart of the storm. He hopes it will keep the fading engines turning over.
In the face of relentless battering by the rain, we tore into dives at 100 knots and plunged down through a wilderness of darkness and swishing water.
Southern Cross was last heard from 2 hours ago. Charles Kingsford Smith and his crew encountered severe weather somewhere between New Caledonia and Brisbane.
June 9, 9:50 a.m. Smithy and the crew are grateful to be alive. But they have no idea where they are. Then, in the distance, they see land. Australia. They're 270 kilometres off course. Not bad, considering.
Crossing the Pacific at that time was for Australians the equivalent of travelling to the moon. It represented a frontier of impossibility that had been overcome.
Charles Kingsford Smith and his crew have crossed the Australian coast above the northern New South Wales town of Ballina. They expect to land at Brisbane within the hour.
It was Kingsford Smith, an Australian, that did this incredible flight from America to Australia. The longest overwater flight at the time. Nothing like it had ever been done before, ever attempted. and they got away with it.
At 10:50 a.m, Southern Cross touches down at Eagle Farm, Brisbane. 15,000 people greet them. As never before, their flight connects Australia with the world. Soon, it will be possible to travel between cities in hours, not days or weeks. Seven years later, Charles Kingsford Smith will disappear over Burma. He and his plane have never been recovered. Australia mourns him. But Smithy's trans-Pacific flight stands as one of the most remarkable achievements in aviation history, and it inspires a nation. August 19, 1930, Sydney Harbour. Australia's greatest engineering feat stands or falls on what happens today. At stake, 7 years of back-breaking labour, enough money to bankrupt New South Wales, and one man's 40-year dream. Engineer John Bradfield. Inspired, driven, his life's work and the future of the nation hang in the balance.
Bradfield had incredible foresight. Firstly, how he built the bridge, and secondly, what it would lead to. He built infrastructure for the future. He built stuff not just for the people of that day, but for their great-great-grandchildren.
Today, 2 Goliath arches weighing 20,000 tonnes each must meet and hold together. 134 metres above the harbour. There's no room for error. For 150 years, Sydney has been a city divided. Engineers continually imagine ways to span the harbour and wait for technology to catch up.
Sydney-siders had been dreaming of a fixed connection from north to south for years. The first plan of a bridge was the 1850s, but one of the tricks was building a bridge that could span across without having a pylon in the middle and interfering with the shipping.
By 1910, ferries shuttle 13 million passengers every year. But peak hour queues are long and patience is short. For Sydney to become a modern city, it must find a better way to connect. Bradfield dreams not just of bridging Sydney's shores, but driving Australia into a new age.
When I visualise the future, I feel that I was born 30 years too soon, because the achievement of today will be but a stepping stone for the greater feats necessary for the development of this great city.
July 1923, construction finally begins. Everyone's excited by Bradfield's design, a cantilever bridge. But even as the first sod is turned, he's having second thoughts.
Bradfield is a driven man and a stubborn man, and he wants to get his bridge built, but not just any bridge. When he first designs a bridge, when he first conceives of a bridge, it's a big, ugly cantilever model. Then Bradfield, at the last minute, changes the tender process. And he sees that they can build an arch bridge, that it will be cheaper, it will be more beautiful, it'll have those graceful lines. It was a very radical act. It was a daring act. Nobody had built a bridge of that scale.
Construction begins on the 503-metre steel arch, anchored by 4 hewn stone pylons. The 2 halves attached to each shore on massive hinges that will, in theory, allow the arch to meet in the middle. The bridge is a blend of clever engineering and courageous manpower. Up to 4,000 men work 130 metres above the harbour. It's backbreaking and dangerous. In 1929, there's no worksite safety, no helmets, no guardrails. Bradfield supervises every detail. He works the men hard. They earn a fair wage. But disaster is about to strike. October 29, 1929. Black Tuesday. A stock market crash in New York triggers economic meltdown around the world. The Great Depression. In Australia, a quarter of the workforce laid off. 30,000 men take to the road looking for a job. Australian families go hungry. New South Wales is broke, and it's in the middle of one of the most expensive construction projects in Australia's history. Bradfield's great ally is New South Wales Premier Jack Lang.
Jack Lang was determined to get that bridge built no matter what it cost, because Jack Lang understood one thing, that every cent he spent on that bridge went to workers' families of New South Wales. And if he didn't keep that bridge going, there was no employment for those people, there was no food on the table for those families, and they were really tough times.
Lang will lean on Canberra and the British banks to keep funds flowing to the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The workers keep their jobs. The bridge continues to rise. Because it breathes life into their ailing economy, Sydneysiders nickname it the Iron Lung. Almost a year after the crash, the moment of truth. Until the arch joins, the structure is fragile and could fall. The last few metres are the most critical and tricky. Bradfield's vision, Australian workmanship, and the future of a city are on the line. They loosen cables 1/2 metre thick and lower each arch on its giant hinge. Centimetre by centimetre, the bridge comes together.
All of Sydney's watching this. I mean, the bridge is the biggest deal in town. It's the biggest deal in Australia. You could see it from right across Sydney. All the knockers are out. Everyone's saying they've stuffed it up, you know, because it's not quite here and it's not quite there. And even the engineers aren't sure they haven't stuffed it up.
The two halves of the arch must meet at exactly the same height.
An arch is two weaknesses that become strong only when they touch. And if they misalign, you're in big trouble, because how are you going to make them match up with each other? You can pull one down, but you can't push the other one up.
There are no second chances. For the first time, the two halves of the arch touch. 39,000 tonnes of steel kiss in the sky. Only 13 millimetres of perfect alignment. Bradfield's men seize the moment and lock the arch in place. Bradfield's bridge unites a city and inspires a nation. In all, 50,000 tonnes of steel, 6 million rivets, 270,000 litres of paint, 16 workers' lives. The cost is high. The result, a triumph and a symbol of what Australia can achieve in the toughest of times.
Every time I see the Sydney Harbour Bridge, I get a totally non-scientific and irrational leap of joy.
It's an amazing construction. I defy anybody to lay eyes on that bridge for the first time or even the 100th time and not be impressed by its grandeur and its size.
You get the fireworks happening on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and you know people are watching this all over the world, and you feel very proud.
One of the world's greatest engineering feats, the coat hanger, remains famous all over the globe. an iconic reminder of Australian ingenuity and ambition. Like the bridge, sport lifts Australian spirits in the Great Depression. VFL, rugby league, cricket, the outrage of bodyline, and racing. November 1, 1930, Caulfield, Melbourne. Robert Philpotts rides his new birthday present, a hand-me-down bike. He'll see two unusual things this morning. The first is a flash new American car. The second is the most universally admired Australian of the day. Farlap, lightning fast, big-hearted, about to face the greatest test of his life, on the racecourse and in the street. His loyal strapper is Tommy Woodcock. Robert Philpotts' family and friends back Farlap whenever they can afford it, sometimes when they can't. The big red horse carries the hopes of Australia, but also attracts powerful enemies. Since exploding onto the racing scene, Farlap strikes fear into the hearts of bookies. 19 wins from 22 starts. For punters, he's the good news story that keeps delivering during the dark days of the Depression.
The Depression was true poverty, so we needed symbols of hope. In a situation like that, it's only hope that can really keep you going. The thought that somehow tomorrow is going to be better than today. And I think Farlap gave people that sense of hope.
Hope of a winning bet on Farlap drives punters to illegal off-track gambling dens. Starting price, or SP bookies, operate in pubs and back rooms. Their business is made easier by new live radio race calls.
Punting, betting, whether it be illegal, whether it be two-up, whatever, Australians have always liked to flutter. And I think it's amazing that 120,000 people can go to the Melbourne Cup and more than half of them don't even watch the race.
In 1930, Farlap is the red-hot favourite to take the Caulfield and the Melbourne Cups. But a shady syndicate backs the second favourite, Amidst, to win at Caulfield, and Farlap in the Melbourne Cup. Bookies all over Australia think they're mad and give the syndicate odds of 20-1. Then comes the news that sends shockwaves around the nation. Farlap is mysteriously scratched from the Caulfield Cup. Amidst wins it by a length and a half. Now, if Farlap wins the Melbourne Cup, hundreds of bookies stand to lose big money. Unless they do something drastic. Perhaps it's Farlap's lightning reactions, or the quick thinking of Tommy Woodcock, but not a single shotgun pellet finds its target. It will be 30 years before Robert can bring himself to speak of his hero's brush with death. Despite the morning's trauma, that afternoon, Farlap wins the Melbourne Stakes, the first event in a grueling week of racing. For 2 days, Tommy Woodcock stays closer than ever to Farlap. And come Melbourne Cup Day, all eyes are on the big red horse. Farlap starts well back. Then, despite carrying a massive 62.5 kilo handicap, he makes his run. With 400 metres to go, he hits the front. Just 4 days after an attempt on his life, Farlap wins the Melbourne Cup by 3 lengths. His victory busts bookies all over the country and rewards the faith of small-time punters.
He won on Derby Day, after the shooting. He won on Cup Day. He came back 2 days later and won on Oaks Day and won on the final day. He won it every day of the carnival. It's unique. It won't be done again. It's part of the Flemington onslaught. It was the week that transformed him from a champion horse to an icon.
3 years and 15 wins later, after his first victory in America, the horse that captures Australians' imaginations and carries their hopes dies in mysterious circumstances. His strapper, Tommy Woodcock, is beside him to the last. In Farlap, Australians see qualities the whole nation will soon need: fortitude, tenacity, loyalty. Through the tough times of the 1930s, Australians stick together and hold fast to democracy. But Germany and Japan embrace extremism and violence. Australia must now fight a second world war, less than a generation after the first nearly broke her. January 1942, the University of Sydney, a top-secret delivery that could save Australia and help the Allies win the Second World War. The Pacific War is going badly. Japan has decimated the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor and marches south through Asia. Soon, it will invade Papua New Guinea on Australia's doorstep. The latest warplanes and aircraft carriers make Australia vulnerable as never before.
The country is exposed to the possibility of Japanese invasion. And for the first time, Australians feel that they're not just fighting this war for the empire, they're fighting it for themselves.
The race is on to perfect radar that will work across the vast distances of Australia and the Pacific.
The great advantage that radar gives you in a war is that you can see the enemy in bad conditions through the clouds at night, and you can pick them up from hundreds of kilometres away and know where they're coming, and then muster your troops.
In a secret radar laboratory, Australian scientists work round the clock. The key physicist here is Ruby Payne-Scott. Brilliant, determined, one of only 2 women scientists employed by the Australian government. Most men expect women to be wives and mothers only, but perfecting radar has baffled some of the finest male minds in the world. Ruby believes she can succeed where they have failed.
In addition to her obvious brilliance in creating this technology, it's fascinating to just think of what she represents. She was someone who was able to break through. Think of all of the women that we didn't get to find out what they were able to actually achieve.
With almost 1 million men in uniform, Ruby and thousands of Australian women step forward in their country's darkest hour.
So I need 2 sine waves coming out of the potentiometer at 90 degrees out of phase.
Miss Ruby Scott. Captain Roberts.
Ah, yes. Over there. I'll be with you in a minute.
Basic radar has helped the British win the Battle of Britain. They share their secrets with Australia. The Australian radar is smaller, mobile, but it isn't accurate enough to detect bombers. Yet. On Ruby's radar screen, objects show up as blips. The problem is, all the blips look the same. A Japanese plane, a flock of birds, an enemy ship, or a whale.
Okay, ready?
The team's invented a way to test their radar by simulating enemy planes.
Run the simulation.
The best way to test a radar system is actually against a physical plane. This was too expensive and impractical, so Ruby simulated a plane electronically, and this is way back in the day before we had digital, inside her radar system, and then had that echo fly across the screen, and then had another part of her system try to find that echo. Incredibly clever.
They simulate a bombing raid on Sydney Harbour.
What can you see?
Possibly something. It's faint. Wait. No.
So far, Ruby's radar is inaccurate. Objects are being lost in the background noise.
Well, you should be seeing an enemy aircraft, range 4 miles.
No.
3 miles?
There's something.
2 miles?
No. It's gone.
Bombs away. Sorry, gentlemen, powering down.
Fuzzy reception is a recipe for disaster.
Thank you. More to do.
If, as Burgess has shown...
Time is running out. Japanese aircraft carriers patrol the seas to Australia's north. Ruby needs to find a formula to make the radar signals clearer, fast. It must pinpoint the direction and speed of enemy aircraft up to 160 kilometres away.
Nobody could tell what the Japanese were going to do next. They just conquered Southeast Asia. Singapore's fallen, the Philippines have fallen. They've attacked Australian territory in New Guinea. So it's a reasonable fear to think that the Japanese' next objective is not just Darwin with bombs, but Darwin with landing craft.
Again and again, she refines her formula, each time putting it to the test.
-1 indices multiplied by 7.
The team works relentlessly until finally they make what they think is the crucial breakthrough.
I think that's it.
Ruby's unique formula for visibility.
Thank you.
But will it work?
Okay, gentlemen, let's try this.
If today's test succeeds, it will be a scientific triumph for Ruby and a crucial advantage for the Allies in the Pacific.
Thank you, gentlemen. Powering up. Okay, thank you, Nick. We're ready to run the simulation. What do you see?
Plane.
Jeff? Checking the variable black and white receiver is running an input frequency of 100 to 1600. Confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed. And now?
Another plane. Greater in intensity. Bearing 238 degrees. Range 6 miles.
And now?
Speed 200 knots.
Gentlemen, I believe we've isolated the signal.
Ruby's persistence pays off. Her formula isolates fast-moving aircraft on the screen, further away and in more detail than ever before.
The crucial achievement of Ruby Payne-Scott dealt with signal to noise. Sometimes you have a big fat signal and it stands way out of the noise. Not in this case. There was all sorts of noise in the background, and she invented a special mathematical algorithm that lifted the signal out of the noise, and so suddenly the radar operators could find the enemy.
But for it to be any use, Australia and her allies must get radar in place before Japanese bombers arrive. For Darwin, it will be too late. On February 19, 1942, with no radar in place, Australia's worst fears are realised. Undetected, over 200 Japanese bombers attack Darwin. More than twice as many bombs fall on Darwin than fell on Pearl Harbor. Over 70 Australians die. But a few months later, in the Solomon Islands, Ruby's groundbreaking radar is crucial to the winning of one of the most important battles of the Pacific War. The Americans used Australian radar to detect Japanese planes well before they attacked Guadalcanal. Here, and in the great battles to come, Ruby Payne-Scott's brilliance and perseverance will help save an uncountable number of lives. But the Pacific War and the fate of Australia hang in the balance. The courage and innovation with which Australia fights will define the country long after the war is over.